The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the sleepy town of Willow Creek, where the river flowed lazily through the heart of the valley. Jessie stood on the bank, her heart racing as she gazed at the turbulent waters swirling below. Just hours ago, she had been filled with hope, but now she felt trapped. The river had swelled after a heavy spring rain, transforming from a gentle stream into a roaring current. Jessie needed to cross it. On the other side lay her grandmother's house, a place filled with warmth and memories she cherished. She wanted to reassure her grandmother, who had fallen ill the week before, but now, facing the raging water, doubt flooded Jessie's mind. Just then, she heard a voice behind her. It was a cowboy, tall and rugged, with a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his eyes. His worn boots sank slightly in the soft earth, and his jeans were dusted with the remnants of a hard day's work. He looked like he had stepped right out of a storybook. Jessie turned, startled. "I need to get across," she stammered, her voice trembling. He took a step closer and studied her face. There was kindness in his gaze, but also an understanding that made her heart race. "Name's Cole," he said with a hint of a smile. "You're right to be cautious." Fear bubbled inside Jessie. She had always been afraid of water, especially when it turned wild like this. "I can't just sit here," she whispered, staring back at the swirling current. "I get it," Cole said, his voice low and calm, almost like a lullaby wrapping around her. His words struck a chord within her. Memories of baking cookies and sharing stories with her grandmother flooded her mind. The thought of not being there when she needed her most felt unbearable. "She's sick," Jessie replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Cole nodded slowly, considering. "All right, here's the plan. I know this river like the back of my hand." Jessie wanted to trust him, but fear still tugged at her. "Then I'll hold on tight," he said confidently. Something in his steady gaze made her feel a flicker of courage inside. "Okay," she murmured, taking a deep breath. Cole walked closer to the edge of the bank. "Hang on to my arm tight," he instructed. Jessie stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. For a moment they just stood there, studying the chaotic waters. Jessie could feel the energy of the river, the power of nature, and the fear it inspired. He asked, his voice steady. "No," she replied honestly, shaking her head. But before she could think twice, Cole took her hand and they stepped into the water together. The cold water rushed around her legs, sending a shock through her. The current tugged at her feet, making it hard to keep her balance. Jessie clutched Cole's arm with both hands, feeling the muscles beneath his shirt. He steadied her, guiding them both deeper into the river. "Trust me," he said, his voice strong. She nodded, and inch by inch they moved forward. The current swirled around them, pulling at Jessie's feet like an angry child. Her heart raced, and panic threatened to rise as she felt the water pushing against her. But Cole's grip was firm. He encouraged. They stumbled, and Jessie felt the rush of water against her waist, almost lifting her off her feet. Her breath caught in her throat. "Breathe," he instructed, and she focused on his face just a few inches away. The determination in his eyes calmed her a little. With each step, the current grew stronger, but so did their bond. Cole was like an anchor in the storm, his presence giving Jessie the strength she never knew she had. He shouted, and she could see the sun glinting on the water ahead, where the banks widened and the current softened. Suddenly, a wave crashed against them, knocking Jessie sideways. Fear gripped her heart again, and she felt herself slipping away from Cole's hold. In a moment of sheer panic, she cried out. In a flash, he grabbed her wrist with both hands, pulling her back to him. His voice was fierce, and she felt the warmth of his resolve seep into her. Feeling the swell of the water press against her, she clutched him tighter, no longer afraid. Together, they fought through the current. Cole shouted, his words cutting through her fear. With one powerful lunge, they moved forward, and suddenly the river gave way to solid ground. They stumbled onto the bank where the water was gentler, and Jessie dropped to her knees, panting. She touched the grass, relief flooding her system. She looked up at Cole, who simply smiled, breathing hard but clearly relieved as well. "You did it," he said, a flicker of pride in his voice. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, her eyes glistening with tears. He extended a hand to help her up, and as she got to her feet, her heart swelled with gratitude. "Thank you." "Just doing what needed to be done," he said with a humble shrug, but the way he spoke made her realize the weight of his kindness. In that moment, she knew they would forever be tied by this shared experience. Jessie looked at the house in the distance. Her heart was still pounding, but now it was for a different reason. She was almost there. "I should go," she said reluctantly, knowing she needed to check on her grandmother. "I will," she promised, her voice soft. As she walked away, Jessie felt a warmth inside her that she hadn't felt before. The fear that had gripped her was fading, replaced by a newfound strength. She glanced back one last time, catching Cole's eye. His smile was reassuring, like the sun breaking through dark clouds. Crossing the river had been more than just a physical act. It had changed something deep within her. Jessie understood that life often pushes us to our limits, hurling us into situations we can feel are impossible. But sometimes, when we feel the most frightened or alone, help arrives in unexpected ways. When she reached her grandmother's house, Jessie knocked firmly. The door opened slowly, revealing her grandmother, frail but smiling. "Jessie, my dear, I'm here," Jessie said, wrapping her arms around her grandmother, holding her as tightly as she could. "I'm just fine, honey," her grandmother said, pulling back to look into Jessie's eyes. Jessie smiled, feeling a wave of warmth. She shared the story of her adventure, how a cowboy had helped her cross the river. Her grandmother chuckled softly. Jessie's heart swelled with pride. It was true. Cole was a hero not just for getting her across the water, but for showing her that she had strength she didn't even know existed. In that moment, she promised herself that she would carry his lesson with her always. Life would bring challenges and there would be rivers to cross, but she could face them head-on. There would be fear, yes, but also help in the unlikeliest of forms. And when those doubts surfaced, she would remember Cole, the cowboy who steadied her when the waters grew wild. That day, under the warm sun filtering through the trees, Jessie felt lighter, braver, and more alive than ever before. As she sat with her grandmother, sharing stories and laughter, she knew her heart was now a little fuller, and the world just a little brighter. Jessie stood at the edge of the river, heart racing like a wild horse. Her eyes were fixed on the churning water, a frothing mass of white and brown as it crashed against the rocks. She was trapped, cornered by the very nature she had always loved. A sudden spring storm had turned the gentle stream into a ferocious torrent overnight. Panic rose in her chest like a tide, threatening to pull her under. She glanced around, her pulse pounding in her ears. There was no path to cross. The bridge that once connected her side to the other was gone, swept away by the relentless rain. On the far bank stood her grandmother's house, the warm light flickering in the window. Jessie had to reach her. Her grandmother had been growing weaker every day. Now was not the time for fear. For a moment, Jessie hesitated, staring at the water's roar. She thought about turning back, but the image of her grandmother, frail and vulnerable, spurred her forward. Just as she took a step closer, a deep, reassuring voice broke through the chaos. Startled, Jessie turned to see a cowboy standing nearby, tall and confident. He was dressed in worn denim and a sturdy hat that shaded his eyes. A faint grin flickered across his face, and Jessie could see the strength in his posture, like a tree standing firm against the storm. "I need to cross," Jessie stammered, her voice shaky. His gaze followed hers to the raging water. "It is dangerous," he said, his tone steady. "But it doesn't mean we can't do it," she asked, still feeling doubt creep in. "Name's Cole," he replied, stepping closer. "I know this river like my own heartbeat." "Jessie," she said, meeting his eyes. They were intense and filled with an understanding that made her feel a little less afraid. "All right, Jessie, let's make a plan." Before she could protest, he was already moving toward the water, scanning the bank for a way in. Jessie watched him, filled with a mix of admiration and fear. There was something bold about him, a kind of confidence that wrapped around her like a warm blanket. She called out, gripping her hands together nervously. Cole looked back, his smile unwavering. "You won't be alone." That did it. Jessie took a deep breath, steeling her nerves. She stepped closer to where Cole stood, feeling the power of the river resonate beneath her feet. The roaring water seemed to mock her, but she clung to his words. Cole waved her over and pointed to a narrow entryway where the trees leaned over, creating a makeshift bridge of roots. "We'll start there. It's shallow for a bit, but the current can still be strong." With each step toward the water, Jessie felt a flutter of fear, reminiscent of a first-time rider mounting a spirited horse. The cold water lapped at her legs, sending a shiver through her. She looked at Cole, who nodded reassuringly. "Remember, just focus on the step in front of you," he instructed. "Don't look at the whole river, it's too much." As they waded into the current, Jessie felt the water grip her ankles, swirling and demanding her attention. The force was dizzying, threatening to sweep her away if she faltered. Cole took her tightly by the arm. "Hold on to me," he said, his grip steady, like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. They moved slowly, one careful step, then another. The river tussled around her waist. Every inch forward was a battle against the growing strength of the water. Jessie's heart raced, the fear pulsing through her, yet somehow she felt anchored by Cole. "Good, you're doing great," he encouraged, his voice cutting through the tumult. But just then an unexpected wave slammed into her, knocking her sideways. Jessie gasped, the water rising up around her, feeling utterly helpless as she was swept a few feet downriver. Everything spun and blurred, and she thought for a moment that she was going under. But then Cole's arm was around her waist, pulling her back to him. He shouted, face steady. It was enough to draw her out of the panic. Just as she felt herself falter again, she locked her eyes on Cole's. He was the calm in her storm. Together they found their footing once more, pressing against the weight of the river. They pushed on, the water now crashing against their chests, spray flying into Jessie's face. She could feel the adrenaline surging as each step turned into a small victory. Fear began to morph into determination as she focused solely on Cole's encouragement. "Just a little more," he urged, his voice like a beacon in the dark. But as they neared the midpoint, the water surged suddenly, a huge wave rolling in far stronger than before. Jessie could feel her heart drop into her stomach. She cried as the force knocked her off balance again. He tightened his hold, pulling her back, but she felt the water dragging her feet, twisting her around. In that horrifying moment, Jessie's mind raced. They were going to be swept away, lost to the river's fury. Memories of her grandmother's laughter filled her mind, and she couldn't let it end like this. Cole shouted, his fierce eyes locking onto hers. With a surge of adrenaline, Jessie nodded, her instincts kicking in. She could do this. They could do this. She pushed herself back against the water, leaning into Cole, feeling the strength of his presence beside her. Step by step, they fought the current, inching toward the far bank where the trees waited like guardians. Jessie could see the solid ground now, feel the promise of safety blooming in her chest. Finally, they surged through the last wave, propelled toward the edge. Jessie stumbled but steadied herself, and together they stumbled onto the firm earth. She fell to her knees, breathless and gasping, heart hammering within her ribcage. She breathed, laughing through her relief and exhilaration. Cole dropped to one knee beside her, panting as he beamed at her. For a moment they sat there, the sound of the river fading behind them. Life pulsed back through Jessie, her fears dissolving into sheer gratitude. "Thank you," she managed, voice thick with emotion. "It's what we do," he said with a shrug, wiping a hand across his brow. Jessie nodded, feeling overwhelmed by the gravity of what had just happened. The river had threatened to take everything from her, but here she was still standing, still fighting. Cole stood and extended a hand to help her up, his smile warm and infectious. "You don't need to repay me." As they stood at the edge of the riverbank, something shifted within her. This adventure had broken something inside her fear. The river had shown her that there's strength in vulnerability, and sometimes help comes from unexpected places. Jessie glanced back at the water, now seemingly less intimidating. "You were right," she said, catching her breath. "Fear was trying to drown me." Cole's eyes sparkled with encouragement. "Life's a lot like that river. It can be fierce and unpredictable." Together they walked away from the river, closer to her grandmother's house. The warm glow of the windows beckoned, a reminder of the love and hope waiting inside. Jessie felt a newfound energy coursing through her, filled with possibilities she hadn't understood before. As the sun dipped low, casting golden rays over the valley, Jessie glanced at Cole beside her. He chuckled, the sound easy and warm. They reached the door and Jessie turned to him, a thought spinning in her mind. Cole raised an eyebrow, curiosity flickering in his gaze. A spark lit in her heart and she grinned. "Homemade cookies, plenty of coffee. Count me in," he agreed, tipping his hat. As she knocked on the door, her heart swelled with gratitude. She had crossed more than just the river today. She had crossed a threshold in understanding her own strength and resilience. And just like that, the wild waters and the cowboy became memories woven into her journey, a reminder that kindness exists in unexpected forms. Whether standing bravely in front of a challenge or seeking help when we need it most, we are never truly alone on our paths. She opened the door to her grandmother's loving embrace, knowing this moment marked the beginning of something beautiful, something that would carry her through the waters of life, no matter how fierce they may become. Jessie stood paralyzed at the riverbank, her heart thudding like the hooves of a frightened horse. The water raged before her, a swirling beast of white and brown, foaming and churning with fierce energy. Just hours ago it had been a gentle stream, a beloved escape for her in the quiet moments of life. But now it was a torrent, roaring and unforgiving, she needed to cross. On the other side sat her grandmother's house, warmth and safety glowing from the windows. Just a week before, her grandmother had stumbled and hurt her hip, and Jessie had promised to visit. But this was no ordinary river. The storm from the night before had transformed it into a raging powerhouse. Jessie's feet felt rooted in place, fear tightening around her. Thoughts of her grandmother's gentle smile pushed her forward, but the sight of the turbulent water sent a chill racing through her spine. She breathed to herself, feeling completely trapped. Then from behind her, a voice cut through the chaos. Startled, Jessie turned to find a cowboy standing a few feet away, tall and strong, silhouetted against the cloudy sky. His hat shaded his eyes, but she could see the confidence in his stance, a calm like still water in the midst of a storm. Jessie asked, glancing back at the river. "That water's got a mind of its own today, but I know a way across," he said, stepping closer. "Jessie," she replied, her voice trembling yet curious. "All right, Jessie, let's figure this out together." His deep voice carried an assuredness that made her feel just a touch safer. Jessie swallowed, doubt flickering in her mind. "But it looks dangerous," she said, peering into the chaos. "It is," Cole acknowledged, his expression serious, "but I've crossed rivers like this one." She studied him for a moment, feeling a tether of trust forming. Perhaps this was her chance. The thought of her grandmother needing her pushed Jessie forward, and she nodded slowly. "All right then. Let's move," he said, gesturing toward the edge of the river where the current was less fierce. With determination, Jessie took a step closer, her heart pounding in rhythm with the rushing water. Cole led the way to a rocky passage where the water was shallow. "Follow my lead," he instructed, slipping a foot into the frigid water. The moment the icy rush swept over her toes, Jessie gasped, but Cole's presence kept her grounded. She stepped in beside him, the cold wrapping around her legs like 1,000 tiny hands. "Keep your eyes on me," he said, and she did. With each careful step, Jessie felt the current tugging at her, trying to pull her off balance. But she could see Cole's sturdy silhouette ahead, and she focused on him, a lifeline through the chaos. "Just one step at a time," he encouraged, and soon enough, Jessie could feel her fear begin to shift, a small ember of courage lighting inside her. As they waded deeper, the current started to swell, churning around them, but Jessie pressed on, determined. Suddenly, the river roared and a powerful wave crashed into them, sending freezing water splashing up around her waist. Jessie stumbled, her heart racing as panic surged back through her. She cried out, feeling the pull of the current threatening to drag her under. He shouted, reaching for her with one strong arm. She grabbed his hand as he anchored himself, pushing against the force of the water. With her other hand, she clung to a rock, her nails scraping against the rough surface. Cole commanded, his voice cutting through the frantic chatter of her mind. Focus. The steady grip of his hand grounded her. Jessie inhaled deeply, the air filling her lungs as she focused on his calming presence. He urged, pulling her back into the fight against the river. With renewed determination, they pressed on, inching toward the opposite bank. Every step felt like a small victory, but the river roared louder as they approached the midpoint. Jessie's heart raced, fear battling against the fire of determination. Another wave surged, larger than before, crashing over both of them, pulling at Jessie's legs with a fierce strength. The water was relentless, swirling around them like a whirlpool. For a moment she felt herself slipping away, the world twisting and turning, fear rising like a tidal wave within her. Hold up. Cole shouted amidst the danger. His fierce grip snapped Jessie back into the moment. She could see the determination in his eyes, fierce and unwavering. Panic surged again, but Cole's voice rang clear. Look at me, Jessie, keep your eyes on me. With every ounce of strength she could muster, she concentrated on him. The water roared surrounding them, but his steady gaze became her anchor. Moved, pressing against the harsh pull of the river, their legs shaky but resolute. Then there it was. The riverbank materialized in front of them, solid and safe, just one last push. Cole bellowed, his voice igniting her spirit. They surged forward together, lungs burning and hearts racing. They stumbled onto the bank together, collapsing onto solid ground, gasping for breath. Jessie dropped to her knees, her heart racing, but euphoria flooded her body. She breathed, laughing despite the exhaustion. Cole joined her on the ground, panting heavily, but his grin broke through the sweat and worry. Tears pricked at Jessie's eyes, half from relief, half from the sheer overwhelming intensity of what just happened. Thank you, she managed, reaching for his arm. You saved me. Of course you could, he replied, brushing off her praise. His smile turned to a reassuring nod. The world felt different now, painted in vivid colors instead of shadows. Jessie realized that she had crossed more than just the river. She had crossed an emotional threshold, one that had held her back for too long. She wondered aloud, looking at the river that had tried to swallow her. Now you go to your grandmother's house, Cole said, and Jessie's heart swelled at the thought. With a smile, Jessie got to her feet, feeling lighter, stronger. I should probably go, she said, looking back toward the road that wound through the tall grass. But before she could finish her sentence, Cole stepped closer, a glimmer of curiosity in his eyes. He laughed lightly, the sound infectious. Cookies, coffee, and maybe a good story to share, she laughed, the tension beginning to melt away. I'd gladly help you with that, he said, tipping his hat. Jessie chuckled, her heart lighter than it had been in days. Deal. As they walked side by side toward her grandmother's house, Jessie stole glances at Cole, feeling grateful that someone so strong had stood beside her during such a crucial moment. Together they crossed the meadow, the sun now shining through the clouds, warming the ground beneath their feet. Once they reached the wooden porch, Jessie paused, looking up at the familiar home that held so many childhood memories, laughter around the dining table, the scent of cookies in the oven, her grandmother's reassuring embrace. Cole asked, his expression serious again. Yeah, she replied, her heart racing. Thank you for everything. Anytime, he said, a twinkle in his eye. And remember, if you ever face another wild river, just call out. With a wave, he turned and she watched him walk away, the sun shining brightly on his back. Jessie felt a sense of warmth settle within her, gratitude swelling like the rising tide. She turned back to the door, feeling more empowered with each step. As she knocked, her heart raced. A moment later, her grandmother opened the door, her expression lit with a smile that could chase away any storm. Tears brimmed in Jessie's eyes as she stepped inside, the familiar scent of lavender and baking bread wrapping around her like a warm hug. I'm here, Grandma. Her grandmother enveloped her in a gentle embrace. Jessie clung tightly, breathing in the comfort she had missed so much. I was worried about you, dear, her grandmother said softly. Jessie pulled back, her heart full, ready to share the adventure she just had. You won't believe it, I crossed the river. Meanwhile, memories of her challenging journey danced in her mind, the fear, the uncertainty, the embrace of a stranger turned ally. All of it had shaped her, had pushed her beyond what she thought was possible. As she recounted her tale, laughter and warmth filled the house. Jessie knew that life would bring challenges, more wild rivers to cross. But she also knew now that she was brave enough to face them, and that help could come in unexpected forms, just like Cole had shown her. So as the sun set over Willow Creek, casting a golden glow over the valley, Jessie felt an unshakable truth sink in. Sometimes crossing the wildest waters leads to the brightest shores, and she was ready for any journey ahead. Jessie stood at the water's edge, feeling as if the world was closing in around her. The river was a raging monster, swollen with rain, churning and crashing against the rocks like a wild beast trying to escape its confines. Just moments ago, it had been a gentle stream, a place where she found solace in the evening light. But now it seemed to mock her, roaring and rolling with fury. Her grandmother needed help. A nasty fall last week had left her in pain, and now Jessie had to get across this treacherous expanse to reach her. Panic gripped her like a tightening vice, squeezing her chest. What had once felt so simple now seemed insurmountable. She whispered to herself, casting desperate glances at the current that threatened to swallow her whole. She could turn back, could retreat to the safety of her car and forget this madness. But turning back felt like abandoning her grandmother, who depended on her now more than ever. Just as fear threatened to pull her under, she heard a deep, calm voice nearby. Startled, she spun around to see a cowboy standing a few feet away, tall and solid, a figure carved from the earth itself. His well-worn hat cast a shadow over his face, but the strength in his posture was unmistakable. He had a rugged look, jeans faded from years of work, and a plaid shirt that hugged his broad shoulders. Jessie stammered, unable to find her words. "Name's Cole," he continued, stepping closer. Jessie nodded, her heart pounding. "I need to get to my grandmother." "I see," Cole replied, surveying the turbulent waters with a seasoned eye. "This river's no joke today." The initial wave of dread washed through her again. "But it looks too dangerous," she protested, glancing nervously at the swollen river. "Everything worth doing is dangerous sometimes," he replied, his tone unwavering. Jessie felt hesitant, but beneath that doubt was a flicker of hope. "I don't know," she murmured, staring into the water's dark depths. "Here's what I can promise you," Cole said, his gaze locking onto hers. "If we stay together and keep our wits about us, we can beat this river." The sincerity in his voice stirred something deep within her, and before she could second-guess herself, she made the decision. "Okay." "Good choice," he said with a quick grin, and Jessie felt the tension in her shoulders ease just a little. Together, they walked to the bank where the trees offered some shelter from the fierce current. "We need to get our bearings first," Cole said, scanning the river's edge. Taking a deep breath, Jessie stepped into the cold water. It lapped against her legs, a shock that nearly made her turn back. "It's just the shock," Cole reassured her, wading in beside her. With every inch they moved deeper, the water climbed higher. Jessie concentrated on the rhythm of her breath, matching it to Cole's steady movements. The current swirled around them, tugging at her feet as if trying to pull her back. "Focus on my voice," Cole said, his voice cutting through the noise of the rushing water. As they moved, she felt the cold bite at her skin, but Cole's presence steadied her. With each careful step, she concentrated on an inner strength she never knew she possessed, pushing forward against the pull of the river. Then came the roar she feared the most. A massive wave rushed toward them, crashing against Jessie. She felt the icy water envelop her waist, knocking her off balance. She shouted, panic rising like the tide. Cole yelled, catching her by the arm as the current grabbed at her legs. The strength in his grip was like an anchor, pulling her back to solid ground. For a moment she felt lost, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. He urged, his voice steady and strong, reminding her to breathe through the chaos. They fought against the current, inching their way forward. Jessie's legs trembled, her breath quickening as adrenaline surged through her veins. Cole encouraged, the confidence in his words wrapping around her like a lifeline. With each step, Jessie felt the confidence building, igniting a fierce determination within her. Every inch forward became a victory, and as they pressed on, the river began to yield. Cole shouted, his voice cutting through her fear. Just as she thought they might reach safety, the river erupted with another violent surge. Water crashed around them, and Jessie felt herself slipping. She cried, panic rising again. He shouted, anchoring himself against a rock as he pulled her close. I won't let you fall. Her heart raced, but in that moment, Jessie realized she had no choice. She had to trust him. Wild flashes of doubt threatened to cloud her mind, but she clung to his presence, feeling his strength seep into her. He commanded, his voice fierce. Together they pushed forward, leaning into the current, determined to overcome the mighty force of the river. The world around them was a blur of rolling water, but Cole's grasp brought clarity amidst the chaos. Then she saw it. The bank ahead was in sight, firmer ground waiting to embrace them. Cole urged, the desperation in his tone igniting one final spark within Jessie. With everything she had left, she surged forward, gripping Cole's hand as they powered through the last waves. They stumbled onto solid ground, crashing onto the bank, breathless and alive. Jessie laughed, tears of relief spilling from her eyes. Cole dropped beside her, panting heavily but exhilarated. Jessie looked at the river behind them, now a distant roar, a wild beast tamed, and then she turned to Cole, gratitude overflowing. Thank you, I couldn't have done this without you. I just showed you what you could do when you believed in yourself, he replied, wiping water from his brow, his smile warm and genuine. As they lay there catching their breath, Jessie felt something shift within her. She had crossed not just the river, but a threshold within herself. The fear that had held her back was beginning to dissolve, replaced with an undeniable strength. Cole asked, stretching out beside her on the dry ground. I need to get to my grandmother, Jessie said, looking back at the path leading to her home. Go on then, Cole said, pushing himself up. Jessie hesitated, longing for more time. Wait, can I thank you properly? I want to make you dinner or something. His eyes lit up with surprise and amusement. A meal, now that's something I could get behind, he replied with a grin. With a laugh, Jessie felt the warmth of possibility spreading within her. Cole chuckled, tipping his hat. As they walked toward her grandmother's house side by side, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the world in golden light. Jessie felt lighter, freer, as if she had not only crossed the river but was shedding the weight of her worries. They reached the wooden porch framed by flowering vines, and Jessie turned to him one last time. "Thank you again, Cole." Cole smiled, a flicker of something deeper passing between them. "Just remember, you have strength within you." As Jessie knocked on the door, she felt empowered, her heart racing with excitement and a newfound sense of purpose. When her grandmother opened the door, her eyes filled with love and concern. "Oh, Jessie," she exclaimed, rushing into her grandmother's embrace. As warmth enveloped her, Jessie felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. Today had changed everything. She had faced her fears, crossed a wild river with the help of a stranger who had reminded her of her own strength. The chaotic sounds of the river faded away as laughter filled the house. Jessie recounted her adventure, her grandmother's eyes widening in disbelief and admiration. As the stories flowed, Jessie recognized that she was not just sharing what had happened, but how it had transformed her. With the warm glow of the evening settling around them, Jessie knew that life would always present challenges. There would be more rivers to cross, storms to weather. But now, with Cole's words echoing in her heart, she understood that she could handle whatever came her way. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, surrendering to the night sky, Jessie felt a sense of hope blooming within her, bright and fierce, ready to take on the wild adventures life would bring. Jessie stood at the riverbank, her heart pounding in her chest like a wild drumbeat. The water surged and roared, muddy brown and menacing. It had been a gentle stream just days before, a soothing retreat where she would often escape the chaos of life. But now it was a beast, fierce and untamed, a raging torrent threatening to swallow everything in its path. Just moments earlier, Jessie had felt a rush of hope as she approached the familiar bank, her mind filled with thoughts of her grandmother waiting on the other side. But the reality before her crushed that hope almost instantly. She needed to cross, and with every glance at the treacherous river, she felt a wave of dread crashing against her. The last week had been a whirlwind. Her grandmother had fallen in the garden, sustaining a painful hip injury. One phone call had sent her racing to the old house, but the journey she had expected to be simple now seemed insurmountable. "Think Jessie," she mumbled to herself, glancing around for help, but the riverside was empty save for some wildflowers swaying gently in the breeze. She could retreat, she could head back home and convince herself everything would be fine. But deep down, she knew that turning back wasn't an option. Her grandmother needed her. As she took a hesitant step closer to the water's edge, a voice jolted her from her thoughts. Startled, she turned to see a cowboy standing a few paces away. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and ruggedly handsome. His dark hat shielded his eyes, but she could see the confidence oozing from him. He stepped closer, and Jessie could see the lines on his face from days spent under the sun. "My name's Cole," he said, leaning against a nearby tree with an easy smile. "I need to get to my grandmother's house," Jessie stammered, her voice trembling slightly. "But that water," Cole nodded, taking in the swirling current. "It is." Jessie hesitated, assessing the stranger before her. Everything about him exuded strength, and he had an air of calm that was almost infectious, but fear gripped her. She asked, anxiety bubbling within. "Everything worth doing comes with a risk, sweet girl," he replied, his tone steady. "But if we do it right, we can make it." She felt a flicker of courage igniting within her. Perhaps this was her moment. "All right," she finally said, her voice stronger than she thought it could be. "Good call," Cole said, his grin widening as he moved to the river's edge. Together, they walked to a place where the water appeared somewhat calmer. The river lapped gently at Jessie's ankles as she stepped in, sending a shock of cold coursing through her body. She exclaimed, shivering. "It's just the shock," Cole reassured her, wading deeper into the water. As they continued, the current began to tug at her legs, pulling her down, and panic surged back. She gasped, "Focus on my voice and keep your feet planted." "One step at a time," he ordered, his tone commanding but calm. Jessie held onto his gaze, feeling the adrenaline pumping through her veins. The water rose steadily, swirling around her waist. With each step, she felt her confidence wavering. She cried, fear creeping back in. Cole said firmly, his grip bolstering her resolve. With his encouragement, Jessie dug deep, her feet finding their rhythm. Her heart started to steady as she concentrated on the steps she was taking rather than the overwhelming chaos around her. The water embraced her, cold yet strangely invigorating, and a sense of determination rose within. Just then, a powerful surge crashed into them. Jessie's breath caught in her throat as she stumbled backward, the water rising to meet her chest. She shouted, desperately reaching for him. He yelled, anchoring himself against a rock as he grasped her arm. Fear engulfed her, and for a moment she felt like she was drowning in uncertainty. But Cole's strength was a lifeline. "You've got this, Jessie." His eyes were fierce, and that intensity swelled inside her. Barely able to see the shore through the splashing waves, Jessie focused on his voice. He shouted, determination coursing through him. Together they surged forward, pushing against the obstacles the river threw their way. One step became two, then three. The world blurred around them, but she could feel the warmth of Cole's encouragement feeding her courage. He yelled, his face illuminated by a fierce light, unwavering and resolute. But just as they seemed to make headway, another wave crashed violently, pulling at her once again. Jessie felt herself slip, the force swirling around her, threatening to drag her under. Dread took hold, a tidal wave of fear crashing into her. She cried, "Keep holding my hand." Cole shouted, his grip tightening around her wrist. With a deep breath, Jessie drew strength from his unwavering confidence. She lifted her chin, her spirit igniting as adrenaline surged within her. With both of them working in tandem, they pushed through the chaos, their determination becoming an unrelenting force. Finally, the riverbank began to materialize ahead of them. Jessie steeled herself, digging her feet into the muddy ground. She shouted, her voice rising above the rushing waters, propelled by newfound courage. With one last surge, they stumbled forward together, finally breaking free of the river's grip. Jessie felt the solid earth beneath her feet, and she cried out in relief as they collapsed onto dry ground. She gasped, laughter bubbling from her lips, tears spilling down her cheeks. Cole dropped beside her, gasping for breath but grinning. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, his eyes sparkling with exhilaration. Jessie looked back at the once feared river, now a wild beast they had conquered together. Gratitude washed over her, mingling with disbelief. "I couldn't have done it without you." Cole shook his head, brushing off her praise with a chuckle. "You had it in you all along." As they caught their breath, Jessie felt the weight of the ordeal lift. The fear that had held her back was fading, replaced by an empowering sense of possibility. She had faced the river, and against all odds, she had prevailed. Cole asked, his face turning serious again. "I need to get to my grandmother," Jessie said, glancing at the path leading to her grandmother's house, only a few steps away now. "She's waiting for me." "Then go on," he encouraged, shooting her an encouraging smile. Jessie hesitated, her heart still racing from the experience. "Can I at least repay you? Let me make you dinner or something." Cole's grin stretched wider, a hint of surprise in his eyes. "A meal? You don't have to, but I wouldn't say no." As Cole's laughter echoed in her ears, Jessie felt light. He chuckled, and with renewed energy, she waved him off in the direction of her grandmother's house. "Thank you for everything." "It was my pleasure, Jessie. Just remember, you're stronger than you think," he called over his shoulder, tipping his hat before heading back toward the river. Jessie began walking toward her grandmother's house, the sun dipping low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. She felt transformed, as if she had shed an old skin. The fear that once paralyzed her began to dissipate, replaced by a determination that burned bright. Upon reaching the familiar porch, she paused for a moment, letting the sounds of her childhood fill her, birds chirping, leaves rustling, the distant echo of laughter. She lifted a hand to knock, her heart racing as she thought about the story she would share. The door opened, and her grandmother stood there, eyes wide with worry turning instantly to relief. "Jessie, oh my dear," she exclaimed, rushing into her grandmother's warm embrace, breathing in the smell of lavender and fresh cookies wafting from the kitchen. As she recounted her harrowing adventure, her grandmother listened, her expression shifting from worry to awe. Jessie could see the pride blooming in her eyes, a reflection of her own newfound strength. Her grandmother exclaimed, drawing back to look at her face. Laughter filled the living room, a bright warmth that chased away all lingering shadows. The world felt different now. Jessie had faced a formidable challenge, and though fear had tried to take hold, she had emerged stronger. As they shared stories over dinner, Jessie felt a sense of peace settle within her. There would be more rivers to cross, no doubt. Life would always throw challenges her way. But now, equipped with the knowledge of her resilience and the memory of Cole's encouragement, she felt ready for whatever lay ahead. "Maybe I'll tackle another river someday," Jessie joked, remembering the rush of adrenaline. Her grandmother chuckled. Their laughter filled the room, echoing against the walls, reinforcing the bond they shared. And as the night deepened and the stars began to twinkle outside, Jessie understood that no matter the challenges she faced, she would never have to face them alone. Jessie found herself staring at the ferocious river, feeling as if her heart might leap from her chest. The water churned violently, a swirling torrent of mud and foam that reflected the darkening sky. Just a few hours ago, her journey had seemed so straightforward. She had set out to visit her grandmother, who was waiting on the other side. But now, with the sun sinking low and shadows creeping in, the river loomed before her like a wild beast, daring her to cross. Panic clawed at her throat, tightening its grip as she took a step closer. How had it come to this? The riverbanks were slick with mud, the trees lining the edge swaying ominously in the wind. It had rained heavily last night, and the once friendly stream had transformed into a raging, unpredictable current. It felt like the universe was telling her to turn back. "No," she whispered to herself, striking her fists against her legs. She had to get across. She thought of her grandmother, frail and alone in that old house, the light flickering in the window. That image propelled her forward for a moment, but as she peered into the depths of the whirlwind that awaited her, doubt crept back in. Every sense screamed at her to retreat. But just as she was about to turn away, a firm voice cut through the chaotic sounds of the water. Startled, Jessie turned to see a cowboy standing a few feet away, tall and steady against the tumultuous backdrop of the river. He was ruggedly handsome, a wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over his sharp features. The confidence wafted off him like a warm breeze. "My name's Cole," he said, taking a few confident strides toward her. "I need to get to my grandmother's house," Jessie stammered, her voice trembling. "You're right," Cole agreed, glancing at the roaring current. "It's dangerous, but I know a way." Jessie hesitated, her mind racing. Trust a stranger. Her grandmother had raised her on caution. She opened her mouth to protest, but something about his steadiness drew her in. He looked as if he had faced many storms before and had survived to tell the tales. "I don't know," she finally replied, doubt creeping in. "Fear can paralyze you or it can propel you forward," he said, his voice low and firm. Jessie felt a rush of something unknown, hope maybe. She held on to it tightly, refusing to let the fear dictate her choices. "Okay," she said, her voice firmer than before. Cole smiled, and the warmth of it eased the tightness in her chest just a little. They approached the water together. Jessie felt her heart race as the cold water lapped at her heels. It was shocking, like plunging into ice water. She exclaimed, shivering as the current twisted and pulled at her. "It'll get your blood pumping," Cole said with a grin, stepping deeper into the water. With a steadying breath, Jessie followed him. The water surged, cold and relentless, swirling around her thighs. She struggled to keep her footing as the river threatened to yank her away. She cried, panic threatening to overwhelm her. Cole urged, locking his gaze onto hers. "You're stronger than you think." Closing her eyes for a moment, Jessie focused on his voice, clinging to it like a lifeline. With every word, she felt the room for doubt shrink. They pressed on, the icy water rising to her waist, the current pushing and pulling at them both. "Just a bit further," Cole encouraged, but Jessie could feel the pressure mounting. A sudden wave crashed into her, cold and blinding. It knocked her sideways, and terror gripped her heart. He shouted, immediately reaching for her. The power of the river was immense, and the water felt like a beast trying to drag her under. She felt herself struggling, adrenaline surging through her veins. "Hold on tight," Cole instructed, pulling her closer. Jessie felt the warmth of his hand reassuring her as they steadied each other. She took a deep breath and focused once more on the bank ahead. She shouted, almost defiantly, as if the very act of saying it would make it true. They moved again, pushing through the relentless current inch by inch. Every step became a small victory. The roaring of the river was a symphony of danger, but Jessie began to hear something deeper within it, a rhythm. With Cole beside her, she listened and found strength in its pulse, and then they stumbled. The water surged again, a mammoth wave twisting around them, and Jessie felt herself slipping. She cried as fear rose like a tide. Cole yelled, his voice cutting through her panic. "You are stronger than your fears, Jessie." His fierce determination lit a fire in her belly. Summoning every ounce of willpower, she pressed forward, feeling the current weaken just slightly. They could reach the other side, she could feel it. With one final push, they surged forward as the bank came into view, and Jessie's heart raced with hope. She gasped, the realization illuminating her spirit. Together they stumbled and lunged through the last wave, finally breaking free from the water's grasp. Jessie collapsed onto the riverbank, breathing heavy, tears streaming down her face. She cried out, laughter mingling with her relief. Cole dropped beside her, equally breathless but smiling. He echoed, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "You saved me," Jessie said, turning to meet his gaze, overwhelmed with gratitude. "It was you, Jessie. You did the heavy lifting," Cole replied, brushing water from his brow with an easy grin. As they caught their breath, Jessie felt the weight of what had just happened wash over her. The fear that had gripped her moments before had vanished. Instead, there was exhilaration and freedom, the realization that she had faced a challenge head-on and emerged victorious. Cole asked suddenly, breaking the reverie as he looked toward her grandmother's house, nestled on the other side of the trees. "I need to go to her," Jessie said, glancing toward the distant home. "Then go on," he encouraged, his voice gentle but firm. Jessie hesitated. "But will you come with me? I'd like for you to meet her," she blurted out, still giddy from the adrenaline of the crossing. At her invitation, Cole's eyes lit up with a surprise, as if she just handed him a delicate gift. "All right, I'd be honored," he said, a genuine smile gracing his lips. Together they walked toward her grandmother's house, the sun now setting, painting the sky in strokes of deep purple and warm gold. Each step felt lighter, the burden she had carried earlier lifting as she felt a sense of hope blossom within. Upon reaching the porch, Jessie took a moment to gather her thoughts, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension twist in her stomach. She knocked gently, and a moment later, the door swung open to reveal her grandmother, eyes wide with relief and love. Her grandmother exclaimed, tears welling up as she stepped forward to embrace her. "I was so worried. I'm here, Grandma, I made it," Jessie said, her voice thick with emotion. And then Jessie turned to introduce Cole, who stood patiently by the door, a warm smile gracing his face. "Grandma, this is Cole." Her grandmother's eyes flicked between them, and in that moment, a quiet understanding sparkled like sunlight. "Thank you for being there for my granddaughter," she said, her voice steady. Cole shrugged, a boyish smile on his face. "It was my pleasure." As the three of them settled around the kitchen table, the scents of lavender and freshly baked bread filled the air. Jessie shared her adventure, each detail weaving a tapestry of emotion and adrenaline. Her grandmother listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to pride. Her grandmother exclaimed, gesturing toward Cole with warmth in her voice. Cole smiled, glancing at Jessie for confirmation. "I'd love that," he replied, with that glint in his eye that spoke of unspoken adventures yet to come. As they shared stories and laughter over the dinner table, Jessie felt a profound sense of belonging. She realized that this moment was not just a celebration of overcoming fear, but a testament to kindness, the connection formed between strangers, and how it could change lives in profound ways. As the evening deepened and the stars peeked through the window, Jessie felt a shift within herself. The strength she had felt crossing the river lingered in her heart. Maybe it was true, the most daunting challenges bring out the best in us, revealing not only our own strength but also the goodness in those we meet along the way. And as they gathered together, sharing laughter and stories that stretched into the night, Jessie understood one essential truth. Life would always bring rivers to cross, but with courage, trust, and the help of a steadfast friend, she could brave any storm that lay ahead. Jessie stood transfixed at the riverbank, her heart racing like a wild stallion. The river gushed and swirled, a furious beast unleashed from the recent storms, muddy waters refusing to yield to her gaze. Just a few hours ago, she had been filled with optimism, ready to visit her grandmother, who was waiting on the other side. But now all at once, hope felt like a distant memory. She had to cross. There was no question. Her grandmother had fallen last week, and the worry etched deep lines on Jessie's face. "I have to get to her," she murmured, glancing nervously at the rushing water. But the current taunted her, rippling and tossing with reckless abandon. Each time the water surged, a wave of fear washed over her. She whispered, tightening her grip on her jacket. She cast her eyes around, searching for anyone that could offer help. The riverbanks were deserted, nature's splendor marred by the roaring undertow. Fate, however, had a different plan. Just then, a gravelly voice sliced through her thoughts. Jessie turned sharply to see a cowboy standing nearby, tall and imposing against the tumult of the river. He wore a weathered hat that shaded eyes that sparkled with undeniable confidence. His jeans were dusted with the telltale evidence of a hard day's work, and his cowboy boots sank slightly into the mud. "Name's Cole," he said with an easy smile. She took a small step backward, feigning composure. "I need to get to my grandmother's house," she stammered, feeling the weight of uncertainty bear down on her. "But nothing worth doing comes without a risk," he replied, his voice calm and reassuring. "I know this river better than most." Doubt flickered in Jessie's mind like a candle in a strong breeze. Trust a stranger, yet something in his confident demeanor made her hesitate. Perhaps it was the way he stood tall, unfazed by the chaos around him. She asked, anxiety creeping back into her thoughts. "Then I'll hold on tight," he said with a grin that glimmered even through her nervousness. His words struck a chord deep within her, and she felt the spark of determination ignite. "All right," she breathed, feeling a mix of fear and resolve. "Good decision," Cole nodded approvingly, stepping toward the edge of the water. With that, they approached the bank where the water was a little more forgiving. "Keep up with me," he instructed as he stepped into the churning current. Jessie hesitated for a fraction of a second before plunging in after him. The icy water rushed around her, sending a shocking chill up her spine. She gasped, pulling back slightly. "You'll warm up," he promised, urging her deeper. They waded in slowly, the current gripping at her legs like a child tugging on a parent's sleeve. Jessie clutched at the rough fabric of her jeans, determination battling against uncertainty. But the water kept rising, the icy fingers lapping at her waist now. She looked up at Cole, who was already a few steps ahead. "Just breathe and keep moving," he encouraged, his voice cutting through the swirling chaos. Jessie forced herself to take another step. She focused on the way his feet glided over the slippery rocks rather than the unforgiving river trying to swallow her whole. She shouted, the determination growing stronger with each passing moment. Yet just as she regained her footing, disaster struck. A violent wave crashed into them, cooler and stronger than before, sending Jessie tumbling sideways. She screamed, feeling the icy water swallow her. Cole shouted as he lunged for her. He grabbed her wrist, his grip firm and unyielding, pulling her back toward him. Jessie felt a surge of panic threatening to claw her down, but as she locked eyes with him, something shifted. He shouted, urgency pulling at his words. With a shaky breath, she nodded, clinging onto his arm tightly. If she allowed herself to feel the fear too deeply, she would crumble. Summoning a resolve she didn't know she had, she surged forward with him. Together they fought against the current, inch by inch. Cole yelled, his voice a beacon of steadfastness amid the storm. Jessie pressed on, each step a hard-won victory. The swirling waters tossed around them, fierce yet somehow transformative. Just ahead, the bank began to take shape, the muddy ground visible through the ever-raging water. Cole encouraged, the power of his voice stirring something deep in her heart. They stumbled, their feet slipping on the muddy banks, but they held on tight to each other as they pushed through. With one final surge, they lunged toward the shore, breaking free from the river's grasp. Jessie felt the ground solidify beneath her feet and let out a cry of victory. Cole dropped beside her, his breath heavy but a wide grin on his face. Jessie laughed, her heart still racing. "Thank you." It was you, he replied, brushing water from his brow. You fought your way through that water. As they caught their breaths on the bank of the river, Jessie felt weight lift off her. The panic that had threatened to consume her was replaced with an exhilarating rush of empowerment. I didn't think I could do something like this, she admitted, glancing back at the wild water now behind her. Every challenge brings that fear, Cole said, his gaze thoughtful, but it also brings growth. With that, Jessie felt a new warmth blossom inside her. It was true. She had faced her fears, had battled the urgent swell of the river, and had found strength within herself. Cole asked, glancing toward the path leading to her grandmother's house. I need to get to her, Jessie said, grateful. Then go, he said, taking a step back. Jessie hesitated, feeling an undeniable connection to this cowboy who had just guided her through one of the most challenging moments of her life. She asked suddenly, surprising even herself. Surprise flickered in Cole's eyes as if she had thrown him a curveball. Sure, he replied, a smile returning to his face. Together, they walked toward her grandmother's house, the last rays of sunlight painting the path ahead in warm hues of orange and yellow. Jessie felt lighter with every step, the burden of fear replaced by gratitude. A familiar sight soon came into view, the cozy old house standing proud amidst the trees, its porch light beckoning warmly. Jessie's heart swelled with relief and happiness as she reached the front door. As she knocked, a myriad of emotions surged through her: excitement, love, even a hint of nervousness. What would her grandmother think of this daring cowboy? The door swung open to reveal her grandmother's familiar face, eyes widening at the sight of Jessie. Oh, my dear, Jessie exclaimed, stepping into her grandmother's warm embrace, feeling the tenderness envelop her. Her grandmother's eyes flicked toward Cole, who stood a step back, tipping his hat politely. And this is Cole. Thank you for looking after my granddaughter, her grandmother said, gratitude radiating from every word. It was my pleasure, ma'am, Cole replied, a touch of humility in his voice. Jessie's heart swelled as she noticed the warmth of admiration in her grandmother's gaze. Sit down, both of you. As they settled around the kitchen table, the familiar sense of baking and the sound of laughter filled the room. Jessie recounted the wild journey through the river, her words spilling out, painting the picture of the challenges she had faced. I didn't think I would ever be able to do something so brave, she said, her cheeks flushed with excitement. Her grandmother beamed with pride. You showed remarkable courage, Jessie. Cole leaned forward, a glint of encouragement in his eyes. It's not just about facing fear, it's about owning your strength. Time seemed to stretch as they shared stories, laughter bubbling up like a warm tide. Each tale drew them closer together, laughter dancing in the air, swirling like the river had only hours before. As the evening wore on, Jessie felt a sense of belonging wrap around her. She learned that it's not just the battles you face alone, but the connections you form along the way that make the victories sweeter. With every shared smile and heartfelt conversation, Jessie realized that this moment would resonate within her for a lifetime. She had faced a fierce river, and not only had she crossed it, but she had also discovered a well of strength deep within herself. In Cole's presence, Jessie felt a flicker of friendship that had the potential to blossom into something more. She glanced at him and caught his eye. Their connection was undeniable, a silent understanding of the challenges they would both face in life. As the stars twinkled outside, Jessie understood that the road ahead would bring more rivers to cross. Yet, fortified by the courage she discovered in herself and bolstered by those who stood beside her, she felt ready for anything that lay ahead. Adventure awaited just beyond the horizon, and Jessie felt alive with possibility, knowing that she could conquer whatever came her way, whether it was a wild river or something even greater. As laughter burst forth around the kitchen table, she smiled, emboldened by her journey and excited for the roads yet to travel. Jessie stood frozen at the riverbank, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and desperation. The water raged before her, a swirling torrent that seemed to taunt her with its violent energy. Just hours ago, she had set out from home with excitement bubbling in her chest, the kind of excitement that comes from knowing you're going to visit someone you love. But now, that excitement was buried beneath a thick layer of dread. Come on, Jessie, you can do this, she whispered to herself, breathing in the crisp air, trying to rally her thoughts. Her grandmother's house was just a short distance away, across this very river, and yet that distance felt insurmountable at that moment. Jessie's mind raced back to her grandmother's last phone call, filled with concern and fear. Promise you'll come visit me, her grandmother had pleaded, her voice shaky. Jessie needed to be there for her, especially after her grandmother had taken a nasty fall last week, but looking at the roaring water, an intense wave of panic washed over her. The turbulence of the river matched the tumult in her heart. Just as she turned to retreat from the river's edge, a rugged voice broke through her thoughts. Turning around in surprise, Jessie spotted a cowboy standing nearby. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a rugged charm that radiated confidence. His weathered hat cast a shadow over his face, but his eyes shone brightly, filled with an unmistakable spirit. She asked, still slightly taken aback. Name's Cole, he replied coolly, taking a step closer. Jessie hesitated but felt a flicker of hope spark within her. I need to get to my grandma. Cole leaned against a nearby tree, arms crossed. It is dangerous, no doubt about it, but I know how to get across safely. She studied him, searching for any signs of deception, but there was something disarming about his calm confidence. Here she was, paralyzed by fear, and here he was, exuding reassurance. Jessie blurted, anxiety clawing at her throat, making it hard to breathe. "You won't drown," he said, his tone low but firm. "Trust in the strength of the river and in yourself." Something about his words penetrated the fog of fear surrounding her. Jessie took a slow breath, deciding to fight against the crushing weight of uncertainty. "Okay, let's do this," she finally said, her voice steadier than she felt. Cole moved toward the water, taking solid steps into the freezing current. Jessie shouted, panic bubbling back to the surface. Cole turned to her, his expression calm. "Just focus on me, keep your eyes on my back, and don't think about the stretch ahead." With her heart racing, Jessie took a deep breath and plunged into the water behind him. The icy shock sent a jolt through her body, making her gasp. She exclaimed. "You'll warm up once you start moving," Cole reassured her, inches ahead, moving steadily through the frigid water. Jessie concentrated on the rhythm of his movements, the way he navigated the slippery stones beneath their feet. The current began to whip around her, tugging at her, trying to pull her off balance. She concentrated, leaning on his lead as they ventured deeper. Cole shouted, urging her forward. Each step was like lifting a weight, but Jessie dug deep, pushing aside the rising tide of panic. "Keep your feet firmly on the ground," he directed. They pressed deeper, the water swirling violently around their waists now. Jessie's stomach churned. She cried, feeling the fear grip her heart. "Listen to me," Cole said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "You're stronger than you know." As they moved, the current swirled like a living thing, testing her resolve. Jessie could feel her legs shaking, the cold cutting through her determination. But with each command that Cole threw over his shoulder, she found a fragment of courage to cling to. Suddenly, a massive wave lurched over them, crashing with such force that Jessie stumbled. She gasped, the icy water pouring over her head. He yelled, lunging toward her, his strong arm wrapping around her waist. In that moment, desperation clawed at her. Fear crept in, dark and suffocating. He commanded, anchoring himself as the river fought back. With all her strength, Jessie clung to him as they struggled through the swirling chaos. Cole shouted, urgency fueling his words. The world spun around her, but his voice was her anchor. They pressed on, the last vestiges of doubt fading as Jessie focused on the strength emanating from Cole. Just when she thought she couldn't take another step, they surged forward, inching closer to the bank. Cole urged, pushing them through with a renewed fervor, his determination lighting a fire inside her. The bank began to reveal itself, solid ground approaching like a promise, and then the water slammed into them again, stronger than any wave Jessie had faced so far. She cried, feeling herself slip. Cole shouted with a fierce intensity that pulled her from the brink of despair. With one final push, they stumbled onto the bank, collapsing together on the soft grass, gasping for air. Jessie gasped, laughter overflowing from her. The release of fear felt like a dam breaking. They both lay on the ground, the rush of adrenaline soothing them in the cool night air. Cole said, breathing heavily but smiling brightly. Boundless gratitude surged through Jessie. "Thank you," she said, tears brimming in her eyes. "You saved me. Just remember that strength is within you," he said, brushing off dirt and water as he stood. Jessie sat up, looking at him, tracing the lines of determination etched on his face. She felt an undeniable connection, a bond forged in the struggle against the raging water. She asked, suddenly aware of how the world felt different. He pointed toward the distant house where her grandmother's light flickered like a beacon. "You go to your grandmother, of course. I should thank you properly," Jessie said, standing up slowly at first, then more confidently. Cole chuckled, the sound warm and infectious. "I'd like that." With a renewed sense of purpose, Jessie led the way toward her grandmother's home, the sun setting behind them, casting a golden glow that felt like a promise. The few minutes they walked felt like a lifetime, the tranquil evening air carrying with it the weight of their shared experience. As they approached the small wooden house framed with flowers blooming under the last rays of light, Jessie felt a swell of emotions, a mixture of relief and gratitude. She knocked on the door, her heart racing in anticipation. Her grandmother opened the door wide, a gasp escaping her lips. "Jessie," she rushed forward, enveloping her in a warm embrace. Jessie gasped, her heart full and grateful. Cole stepped back slightly, feeling like a guardian in the shadows. Her grandmother looked at Cole, eyes bright with gratitude. "Thank you for looking after her." Cole nodded, tipping his hat politely. "Happy to help, ma'am." As the three settled at the kitchen table, the comforting sense of home enveloped them, freshly baked cookies, ginger tea, and lavender, all their familiar favorites. Jessie shared her harrowing tale, recounting every moment, every surge of fear and adrenaline. "You showed remarkable strength, Jessie," her grandmother said, her proud eyes glistening. The warmth of her grandmother's words wrapped around Jessie. She felt stronger now, vibrant in the glow of their shared laughter. "And I learned something important today," she added, glancing at Cole. As the night wore on, stories flew back and forth like shooting stars, creating memories that would warm them on even the coldest days. But as Jessie laughed and felt at home, she couldn't shake the haunting feeling that their journey was far from over. Just then, a distant rumble echoed through the air, a warning that sent a shiver down Jessie's spine. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves outside, dark clouds rolling in where there had been clear skies just moments ago. "Looks like another storm is brewing," Cole said, glancing out the window. His expression shifted, and Jessie felt a flutter of unease. Her grandmother asked, her brow furrowing with concern. With a steady gaze, Cole replied, "It might be." Jessie felt her heart race again, the thrill of adventure tinged with apprehension. The river had already shown its fierce nature today. What more could come? Jessie asked, the excitement and fear blending into something electric. "Yes," Cole nodded, a spark of determination in his eyes. "But first I need to check the bridge. Last storm took a toll on it." The words hung in the air like a promise of more challenges ahead, another river to cross, another storm to brave. Jessie felt adrenaline surging through her veins once more as she reached for her jacket. "I'm coming with you," she declared, resolve solidifying her voice. As they headed out into the brewing storm, Jessie glanced up at Cole, their unspoken bond stronger than ever. "We'll face this together," she said, determination radiating from her. Cole nodded, the hint of a smile resting on his lips. And with that, they stepped out into the shadows of uncertainty, the world around them shifting, preparing for the next storm they would have to navigate, a journey still unfolding, where courage would be their guiding light amidst the unknown.